When I first bought the piece of land, I didn't see it as an investment or even a grand project to showcase. I bought it because it spoke to something deep in me, a yearning for quiet, for space, for the kind of peace I remembered from childhood summers when my parents used to take me fishing at a hidden little pond outside our small town. Life had become noisy, complicated, and stressful. My years of work in the city left me financially secure, but I felt hollow. I wanted something real. That's why, when I found a lake property tucked away behind a stretch of old oaks and rolling meadows, I knew it was meant for me. The lake wasn't enormous, but it was deep, clear, and beautiful. The water shimmered silver at dusk, and on early mornings a mist would hang low over the surface, carrying with it the haunting call of loons. I built a modest cabin there, nothing flashy, just wood and stone, with a wide porch that overlooked the water. That porch became my sanctuary, the place where I sipped coffee, watched the seasons shift, and finally felt that maybe, just maybe, I had come home. The lake had a peculiar history. Years ago, it had been privately owned by a family who later divided and sold portions of the land surrounding it. But the heart of the property, the water itself and the stretch of shoreline I owned, remained private. When I purchased it, I made sure the deed was airtight. The lake, though accessible by a public road leading to other homes nearby, was not theirs to use. It was mine. I didn't think much of it at first. I wasn't possessive about it. I figured as long as no one disrespected the land, I didn't mind the occasional fisherman at dawn or a child tossing a rock into the shallows. Life was too short to squabble over lines drawn on paper. But it turned out, not everyone thought that way. That's where Karen entered the story. Karen lived in the nearest subdivision, one of those polished communities with perfectly manicured lawns and strict HOA rules about everything from mailbox height to the shade of your shutters. She was one of those people who carried herself as if she were the mayor, the judge, and the sheriff all rolled into one. Everyone knew her type, the self-appointed guardian of what she thought was right. To her, the world only worked if she was in control of it. I first met her on a Saturday in spring. I had invited some friends, old college buddies, men and women I hadn't seen in years, to spend a weekend fishing and relaxing by the water. We had set up chairs near the shore, built a small fire for roasting hot dogs, and laughter carried across the lake. It felt good to hear the echoes of camaraderie I'd missed for so long. Then came the sound of footsteps, sharp, deliberate, and uninvited. Karen appeared out of the path that led from the subdivision, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat and carrying a clipboard like she was inspecting a construction site. Her lips were pursed in that way people purse them when they've already decided they're in the right and everyone else is in the wrong. "Excuse me," she said, not as a greeting, but as a command. "You can't have guests here on this lake. It's part of the community, and we have rules about gatherings and lake use." I was startled at first, not by her words, but by the audacity of them. I set my coffee down and looked at her calmly. "I think you might be mistaken. This is my property. My friends are here as my guests." Her eyes narrowed, like I'd just told her the sky was green. "No, you don't understand. This lake is part of the HOA jurisdiction. We have guidelines. No large parties, no fires, no amplified noise. If your guests want to use the lake, they'll need approval." My friends shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. One of them chuckled under his breath, but the tension was real. I stood up and walked toward her, careful not to escalate but firm in my tone. "This lake," I said, "is private land. My land. It's not part of your HOA, and it never has been. I own the deed to the water and this shoreline. I can show you the paperwork if you'd like." For a moment, she froze. You could see the battle behind her eyes. People like Karen don't often hear the word no, and when they do, it short-circuits something inside them. She shifted her weight, clutched the clipboard tighter, and then tried again. "That's impossible," she said, though her voice quivered slightly. "The residents have always used this lake. It's part of our community identity. You can't just keep people out." I smiled, not cruelly, but with the kind of patience you use when explaining something to a stubborn child. "I'm not keeping anyone out unless they cause trouble. But let's be clear, it's not yours. It never was. And as far as community identity goes, I'd suggest building it around something you actually own. The air went still. My friends were silent now, waiting to see how this would play out. Karen's face flushed, and for the first time, I noticed a flicker of uncertainty. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not on her own perceived territory. "You'll regret this," she hissed finally. "I'll bring it up with the board. We'll see what the county has to say." And with that, she turned and stormed back down the path, her sun hat bobbing like a warning flag in retreat. My friends erupted in laughter, but I didn't laugh. I knew better than to underestimate people like her. Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly. She was the type to come back, stronger, louder, armed with more papers and more threats. And I realized then that this wasn't just about one lake. It was about something bigger, about standing firm in the face of entitlement, about drawing lines not just in deeds and contracts, but in respect. That night, as the fire crackled low and my friends told stories under the stars, I found myself thinking about how often in life we let people like Karen take up space they don't own, in our neighborhoods, in our families, even in our hearts. We let them tell us what we can and can't do, even when it's not their right. And I knew then that this little lake, this quiet retreat of mine, was going to become more than just a sanctuary. It was going to become a lesson, not just for Karen, but for me. The morning after Karen's visit, I woke to the sound of loons across the lake and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen where one of my friends, Mike, had already started a pot. It was peaceful, the kind of morning you hold onto in your bones. But beneath that calm, I felt the weight of what had happened. Karen wasn't just going to walk away. Sure enough, by mid-morning, a black SUV pulled up at the edge of the property. Out stepped two men in polos and khakis, with the kind of clipboards that made you think of inspectors. Behind them, trailing like a shadow, was Karen. "Here we go," Mike muttered, handing me a mug of coffee. I walked down the gravel path to meet them. The older of the two men cleared his throat and extended a hand. "Good morning, sir. I'm Dave Simmons, president of the Lakewood HOA. This is Mark, our treasurer. We've had some complaints about activity on the lake." I glanced at Karen, who was standing stiffly with her arms crossed, her lips pursed as though she'd already won. "Complaints?" I asked. "From who?" "My guests." "Because they seem perfectly happy." Dave shifted uncomfortably. "From residents of the subdivision. There's concern about gatherings, fires, and unauthorized use of the water." Now it was my turn to cross my arms. "Unauthorized? Gentlemen, I think there's been some confusion. This lake isn't part of your HOA. It's private property. My property." Mark spoke up then, his voice cautious. "With respect, the residents have historically had access. It's been used for recreation for years." "Historically," I said, "doesn't mean legally. People might have wandered down here before, but that doesn't give them ownership. I hold the deed. I can show it to you." Karen jumped in, her voice sharp. "He's just trying to keep everyone out. He thinks he owns the whole place." I turned to her slowly, my patience thinning. "Karen, I don't think I own it." "I do own it. There's a difference." The men glanced at each other. It was clear they hadn't come here to fight, not like Karen wanted. They were trying to smooth things over. But the truth was undeniable. After a brief, awkward pause, Dave sighed. "If you could provide documentation, that would put this matter to rest." "Gladly," I said. "Give me 10 minutes." I walked back to the cabin, pulled out the thick folder of closing documents I had stored carefully, and returned with the deed. I handed it over, and Dave read it in silence, his eyes scanning the lines, his brows furrowing deeper with each page. Finally, he closed it and handed it back. "Well," he said slowly, "it seems clear. The property, including the water rights, is yours. The HOA doesn't have jurisdiction here." Karen's face turned crimson. "That can't be right. We've always—" Dave held up a hand. "Karen, it's right here in black and white. There's nothing we can do. The lake is his." It was one of those moments where time seems to hang suspended. Karen's confidence cracked right there on the shore. For the first time, she looked genuinely lost, as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She turned to me, her voice trembling with anger. "You're selfish," she spat. "You're ruining this community. People have lived here for decades, and you're destroying tradition. You'll be sorry." And then she stormed off again, her footsteps crunching down the gravel path. The two men gave me an apologetic smile. "We'll speak with the residents," Dave said. "Hopefully, this won't cause further issues." But I knew it would. Over the next few weeks, the tension thickened. Some of the subdivision residents started giving me side eyes when I drove past their streets into town. I overheard whispers at the diner where I often had breakfast. "That's the guy who took the lake." Some people were curious, others resentful. A few even approached me politely, asking if I might consider allowing fishing or canoeing with permission. I wasn't against that. I'd always believed land was best enjoyed when respected. So I created simple rules. Ask first, leave no trash, no large groups. Most people were fine with it, but not Karen. Karen became the thorn in my side. She'd show up on the property line, arms folded, glaring at my guests as if sheer disapproval could drive them away. Once, she even called the sheriff, claiming we were making too much noise. The deputy who came out took one look, shook his head, and told her politely there was nothing wrong. But she didn't stop. One Saturday, I had my sister and her kids over. The kids were splashing happily at the shallow edge of the lake, their laughter filling the air. That's when Karen appeared again, storming down the path like a thundercloud. "Children are not allowed to swim here," she barked. "It's against HOA safety rules." My sister froze, clutching her towel, clearly uncomfortable. I stood and walked over, my voice steady but firm. "Karen, for the last time, this is not your HOA's land. These are my nieces and nephews, and they're welcome here anytime." "They'll drown," she shouted. "And when they do, it'll be on us, the community." "No," I said quietly, "it'll be on me, because this is my responsibility, not yours, not your HOA's." Her face twisted, and for a brief second, I saw something beneath the anger. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of change. Fear of not being the one to dictate the rules. It wasn't really about the lake. It was about her need to be in charge. That night, after my sister had left and the kids were tucked into their car, I sat alone on the porch, watching the moonlight ripple across the water. I thought about Karen, about how tightly she clung to her sense of authority. And I realized something important. People like her aren't happy. They can't be, because life is full of things you can't control. Nature, neighbors, even time itself. And when you fight against that truth, all you get is bitterness. I thought about my own life, about the years I'd spent working myself to the bone in the city, trying to control outcomes, to force success, to shape everything according to my will. It had left me burned out, empty. It wasn't until I let go, until I embraced the unknown and bought this place, that I found peace again. Karen was a mirror, in a way, a reflection of who I could have become if I hadn't changed course. And maybe that was why this battle mattered so much. It wasn't just about property rights. It was about choosing a different path. Summer came quickly that year, and with it, the lake grew even more beautiful. Dragonflies skimmed the surface, the trees stood lush and green, and the evenings glowed golden as the sun set behind the ridge. I found myself inviting friends and family more often, wanting them to share in the gift I'd stumbled into. The lake became a place of laughter, healing, and long conversations under the stars. But Karen was never far behind. She escalated in small but sharp ways. She left notes on my gate, citing violations of rules that didn't apply to me. She rallied neighbors, trying to stir up resentment. She even tried to block the narrow road leading to my property one afternoon, standing in the middle with her arms crossed until she realized the sheriff would be called again. Most folks around the subdivision grew tired of her antics. They wanted peace as much as I did. A few even came by privately, offering quiet words of support. "We know you own the place," one man told me, "and honestly, we're glad you're taking care of it. It's nicer now than it's been in years." Still, Karen pressed on, convinced she could wear me down. The final confrontation came in late August, on a Saturday that started out like paradise. My oldest friend, Jack, had driven up with his grown sons. We planned a day of fishing, grilling, and swapping stories of days gone by. The air was alive with the smell of barbecue, the sound of splashing, and the hum of cicadas. It was one of those days you wish you could bottle forever. Then, like a storm breaking over calm waters, Karen appeared. Not alone this time. She had gathered a small group of HOA loyalists, 4 to 5 neighbors, all following her like she was leading a parade. She marched down the path and onto the shoreline, her voice sharp enough to slice through the laughter. "This has gone on long enough," she declared, pointing at my friends like a prosecutor in court. "You are trespassing. This lake belongs to the Lakewood community, and we demand that you and your guests leave immediately." The crowd behind her murmured agreement, though less confidently than she spoke. I stood slowly, brushing off my hands, and walked to meet her. Jack's sons stood as well, protective, but I waved them off. This was my battle to finish. "Karen," I said evenly, "I've explained this before. This lake is mine. This land is mine. You and your HOA have no authority here." "You're a liar," she snapped. "We've used this lake for decades. You can't take it from us." I pulled the folder I had kept near the porch for just such a day. I opened it, held up the deed, and read aloud, clear and steady, so every single person in her group could hear. Lot 17, including all riparian rights, shoreline access, and water rights. Ownership in full, transferable only by deed. Recorded in the county clerk's office. Then I handed the folder to the neighbor standing closest to her, a man named George. He adjusted his glasses, scanned the document, and his face changed. "Karen," he said softly, "he's right. It's all here. It belongs to him." The murmuring grew louder, this time with doubt on her side. One by one, the neighbors stepped back, unwilling to follow her any further. Karen's face twisted, caught between fury and disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. Finally, I said the words I've been holding back for months. "Karen, you've tried to control me, this lake, even your neighbors. But control isn't the same as respect. You can't bully land into being yours. You can't bully people into following rules they never agreed to. And the harder you try, the more you lose. This isn't about property anymore. It's about peace. And you don't have any." For the first time, she didn't argue. She just stood there, her fists clenched, her face pale. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. The others followed, some shaking their heads. When she disappeared into the trees, Jack clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Well," he said with a grin, "looks like you won the war." But I didn't feel like celebrating. Watching Karen retreat, I felt something closer to sorrow. She wasn't just an enemy. She was a person who had built her whole life around the illusion of control. And when that illusion shattered, she was left with nothing. That night, after the laughter faded and the embers of the fire glowed low, I sat on the porch again, staring at the lake. The water reflected the stars like a mirror, endless and quiet. And I thought about all I had learned. Life teaches you, often the hard way, that ownership is not just about deeds or land. It's about how you hold your ground, how you protect your peace, how you honor what matters. I owned the lake not just because of paperwork, but because I respected it, cared for it, shared it wisely. Karen could never own it because she didn't understand that truth. As the months rolled on, Karen faded from the picture. She stopped showing up at my gate. The subdivision carried on, and in time, people stopped whispering at the diner. I became known not as the man who took the lake, but as the neighbor who preserved it. Families asked politely to fish sometimes, and I welcomed them. Kids came down to skip stones, and I smiled watching them. The lake became a shared joy again, but on the foundation of respect, not entitlement. In the quiet of those evenings, I realized something bigger still. The lake was a mirror of life itself. You can't control who comes knocking, who tries to impose themselves, who storms in with rules and clipboards. What you can control is your response. You can stand firm, calmly, without bitterness. You can choose respect over rage, patience over pettiness. And when you do, you discover something rare, a kind of freedom that no HOA, no neighbor, no Karen can ever take from you. And so the lake remained mine, not as a fortress to defend, but as a lesson to live by. It taught me that peace isn't given. It's chosen. It's fought for in quiet, steady ways. And in that choice lies the deepest kind of ownership, not of land, but of yourself,